Jesus began to speak to the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders in parables. A man planted a vineyard, put a hedge around it, dug a winepress, built a tower. Then he leased it to tenant farmers and left on a journey. At the proper time, he sent a servant to the tenants to obtain from them some of the produce of the vineyard. But they seized him, beat him, and sent him away empty-handed. Again, he sent them another servant, and that one they beat over the head and treated shamefully. He sent yet another whom they killed. So too many others. Some they beat, others they killed. He had one other to send, a beloved son. He sent him to them last of all, thinking, they will respect my son. Those tenants said to one another, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. So they seized him and killed him, threw him out of the vineyard. What then will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come, put the tenants to death, and give the vineyard to others. Have you not read this scripture passage? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. By the Lord has this been done, and it is wonderful in our eyes. They were seeking to arrest him. They feared the crowd, for they realized that he had addressed the parable to them. So they left him and went away. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
For the years that I was in seminary, I had the privilege and the opportunity to get to know seminarians and priests from other parts of the world. I remember meeting a man at Mount St. Mary Seminary when I was visiting. He was studying for a diocese in Afghanistan. And so he was basically preparing himself for the hardships of ministry in that country. So I remember when I was at St. Meinrad, we had people from Vietnam and South Korea and Kenya and Nigeria and Africa. And they all had very interesting situations to share about. I remember one of the guys from Vietnam shared with us that the government was very anti-Catholic, and yet Catholicism was thriving in Vietnam. The seminaries were full, so much so that the government actually put a limit on how many people could be in the seminary. Very interesting. Of course, the people from South Korea, they had to deal with the threat of North Korea, right, on a regular basis. Then I remember a man named Richard, who was from Kenya, and he was assigned to my ministry parish, so I got to know him really well. We all called him King Richard. The reason why we called him King Richard is because he was from a very primitive place in Kenya, where they still basically had tribes and kings. And of course, he was from the royal family. So we called him King Richard. And it was very interesting to hear him describe the faith in his native territory of Kenya. The faith was still very new there. So much so that his father still had multiple wives. And that was kind of the big situation going on in his area of Kenya, is that even though people wanted to convert to Christianity, many of the people in power were struggling to embrace the moral teachings of Christianity. I thought it was very interesting, right, to speak and to learn from those guys about the faith in their countries. As many of you, I'm sure, are aware, Africa is one of the places in the world where Catholicism is thriving more than just about anywhere else. And part of the reason why that is because of people like St. Charles Lwanga, his companions, right, whose feast we celebrate today. St. Charles and his companion were from the Kingdom of Uganda, right? And you know how modern territories adjust. So not really sure exactly what the territory was back then, but it was a very major part of Africa. And he's one of the main patrons that all Africans look to. The story of St. Charles is that basically he was in the court of the Ugandan king. And the Ugandan king's father was very friendly to Christians. He had welcomed Catholic missionaries, Anglican missionaries, and even Protestant missionaries into his country to preach the gospel. At the end of the 1800s was when all this took place. And when that king died, his son took over, and his son was not nearly as friendly towards Christianity. He saw it as a threat. And so he began to ask the boys in his court to do immoral things, and the boys basically stood up. And for that, they lost their lives. So it was a remarkable witness of youth. Basically, all of the martyrs that were martyred with St. Charles, they were all under the age of 25. And they showed immense courage in the face of persecution and torture. When the first one of them was put to death for speaking out against the king, St. Charles, he immediately baptized the rest of them so that they could die as baptized Christians. And they all showed tremendous courage throughout their martyrdom. As Tertullian famously said, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. I think we could make an argument that the reason why the faith is spreading so much in Africa and growing and flourishing is because of the martyrs who made it possible. And so we ask for the intercession of St. Charles the Monk and his companions to continue the growth of the faith in Africa.